Most people think that SEO takes 6 to 12 months to work. And that's just simply not true. And it's not true for two really core reasons, okay? The first is that they don't do things fast enough, and that's whether because they're unsure or they're just slow, right? Big agencies, corporations, whatever, they just do things way too fucking slowly, okay? The other reason people say it takes 6 to 12 months to work is because they're tracking and looking at the wrong KPIs, okay? So today I'm going to break down how I think about SEO strategy in pretty much 3 different segments: immediate, midterm, and long-term, okay? Now, like I said, it doesn't take as long as you think. It definitely doesn't take 6 to 12 months to quote unquote work. You're just looking at probably the wrong KPIs, and or you're doing the wrong things in the wrong order, or just moving too slowly across the board, okay? So immediate growth comes in the form, like when you first start an SEO campaign, within the first month, I don't care if you're an e-com brand, local, B2B, SaaS, whatever, you work with an agency, a freelancer, you're doing it in-house. The very first month of your campaign, the two KPIs you should be tracking are impressions in Google Search Console and rankings. And you can track those in Search Console or a tool like SEMrush, Ahrefs, okay? By the end of month 1, without a doubt, you should be seeing more impressions and higher rankings, okay? Now, the impressions, the line just needs to be going up, okay? It doesn't need to be vertical. You don't need to be ranking number 1. It's just got to be going up, okay? That means you're on the right track, okay? Same thing with rankings. You're not going to be on page 1, probably not even page 2 or 3, but as long as you maybe you weren't in the top 100, now you're in the top 100, okay? That is still positive progress. Maybe you were in the top 100, now you're on page 3, 4, 5, okay? Again, still positive progress. SEO cannot happen overnight. It takes time for you to build up trust and authority with Google, like credibility with Google, with their engines. So impressions and rankings are what you should be tracking in the first few months, okay? So early SEO is really about momentum, okay, not outcomes. If you hire an SEO agency, you hire a freelancer, you start in-house, and your expectations are that you will be break even by next month, and by next month I mean like month 2 of a campaign, right now you should just save your money and your time and really everyone else's time, because SEO will not be profitable for you. Sorry, it could be profitable. It could be profitable for you by next month in certain cases for big brands who can pull a couple quick levers and make things happen quickly. We've definitely made it profitable for our brands inside of a month. However, it's definitely not the standard, okay? If you're a young brand starting out on SEO, let's call young, like sub 50K a month. If you're doing SEO today, like April 1st, beginning of April, by May, you will not be profitable, like guaranteed, probably will not be profitable, okay? So save your money if you're looking for a fix in month 1, 2, or even 3. Okay, your return on investment is probably going to come around month 4, and I'm going to get to how those KPIs shift around that mark. Okay, so quick wins how do you get wins in the first month? Right, we're looking at impressions and we're looking at rankings. How do those happen? Okay, I can tell you right now, it is not in the form of publishing 50 blog posts. If you hire an agency and the first thing they fucking recommend is to publish new blog content, you should look at voiding that contract, guaranteed. Okay. The very first thing you should do are optimize your existing website as it currently stands, okay? Product pages, collection pages, your homepage. Take care of all the keyword research, optimize everything on the site that exists first, because that site as it currently exists without new blog content has already built up some, albeit small, some level of trust in Google. Google has seen it and, it's been in its index for quite some time. So making changes to an existing site with already some history behind it is going to yield faster and more effective changes than just publishing new content onto a bad site, okay? Other things you should look at in month 1, fixing keyword cannibalization. So if you have 2 or 3 pages competing against one another, cleaning that kind of stuff up. You want to fix broken links. You want to make sure your site is crawlable and indexable to your desire, right? Making sure your robots.txt is set up correctly. You've got pagination, all that kind of good stuff, okay? As well as smart internal linking. I've got one really crazy case study where all we did was fix the technical SEO and build internal links in the first month. And I think we added 100 plus keywords to position 1 in the first 3 weeks of working together. Or maybe it's the first 5 weeks, I think is what it was. They had so much blog content, they had so many collection pages, and all we just did was just correct the internal links. And all of a sudden, we were just making money. So we didn't even write a blog the first 2 or 3 months. So you have to know in month 1 what is going to work, and what works for a site. What works for one site will not work for another site, right? Yes, internal linking is good, and should be done on pretty much every site. However, there are some sites where it's more effective than others, like on the one I just described, right? If you've never done SEO, you don't really have a lot of pages to internally link anyway. So not going to be as impactful for you, okay? But again, Horizon 1, like phase 1, immediate term, you're looking for more impressions and higher rankings. And that will come in the form of optimizing your existing site. And again, existing content, existing links, what have you. That is where the wins will come, okay? It is possible to be very profitable in the first 3 months of a campaign. However, like I said, it is not the standard. So do not expect life-changing amounts of money in the first 3 months of a campaign. Otherwise, you will be sorely disappointed, okay? Moving on, months 3 to 6. Let's call this the midterm, okay? At this point, if you're working with a good agency, a freelancer, doing in-house, you should start to see organic search revenue slowly start. It should be ticking up. Slowly, quickly, whatever. It should be ticking up pretty consistently at this time. So you will know in the first, based on impressions and rankings in the first 3 months, if those are continuing to go up throughout the first 3 months, months 4, 5, 6, revenue should start to be impacted by those kinds of things. That is when you will start to shift your view of the most important KPIs from revenue or from impressions and rankings to now non-branded clicks and non-branded rankings of those product pages or those selection pages. Like really, like the bottom of the funnel is what you're interested in, okay? And you're interested in, like I said, the clicks and the rankings of those particular pages, okay? 4 months into a campaign, your content links that you have either updated in month 1 on the existing side of stuff, or if you've built any new stuff in the first 2 months, that is when the content links will kind of start to mature, let's call it. They've had enough time in the index indices, let's call it, that you'll know if it's working or not working. If you published a blog in month 2, month 4, it's still got no traction, like if you leave it alone for another month, nothing is still going to fucking happen, okay? You will know whether or not by month 4, everything you've done up until that point is working or not working. Whatever's working, just do more of that. And whatever's not working, just cut that. Pretty straightforward stuff, okay? If you're a big enough brand, let's call it like high 7, low 8 figures, kind of like the minimum threshold, it's likely also the point where you're going to start to notice that SEO, if done really well, is going to start impacting your blended CAC. So lower acquisition costs as SEO starts to pick up purchase and intent traffic and drive more top of funnel revenue with a more or less consistent bottom line. Okay. Moving out of that months 4, 5, and 6 phase into months 6 onward, let's just call that anything long term. Okay. SEO is really going to become the only metric you should give a shit about after 6 months is organic search revenue. Okay. Yes, rankings are going to be there, clicks are going to be there. All of those things are really in support of revenue. If you're not making money by month 6 of a campaign, your strategy up until this point has been probably very poorly executed. Okay, 6 months is enough time. Simple as that. If your SEO agency or freelancer or your in-house team can't produce an extra dollar by month 6, they're not magically going to figure it out by month 7. There's no magical switch they flip that all of a sudden it starts to work. Around the month 6 mark, you should start to see more consistent growth in organic search revenue than you had previously. And you are looking to really just drive down your customer acquisition cost with SEO. Okay. Around month 6, if you've done a good job, you're definitely if you're making money from SEO at this point in month 6+, you're in the top 3 spots of Google, most likely for either most of or all of your core keywords, or maybe just one really keyword. In any case, you should be looking at building kind of moats around that. So if you're in the top 3, it really becomes a link building game. So you should be consistently or constantly auditing your competitors' link building tactics and seeing if there's any gaps you need to close, and if there's any gaps you need to close for link building, close them quickly. And if you guys are all kind of on a level playing field, you have a similar amount of backlinks to the same kind of competing pages, put a moat between you guys and go build fucking 10 or 20 more backlinks over the next 2 or 3 months and put some distance, put some insurance on your number 1 spot. Okay. The other thing too is don't get so complacent with the keywords you currently have, because there are probably more out there that you're currently missing. Okay. A lot of brands and SEOs, when they look at a website, they're kind of nervous. Like they hate stepping on toes, and like I don't like that kind of either. But I also want to make as much money for my clients as I possibly can. So some brands are like, yeah, like we just sell socks, or we just sell, handbags or jackets or whatever. And like they just have like these basic product categories, like leather handbags is a good example. Okay. Yeah. But like I could rank number one for leather handbags, but I'm theoretically capped on how much money I can make on leather handbags, or like on that collection page. I'm theoretically capped by the amount of people searching for that particular keyword per month. Now, if I rank number one for it for a month, and then another month goes by, it's the same search volume, I'm probably going to make the same amount of money the next month, assuming conversion rate and all that kind of stuff is still equal, right? That's not growth, right? Month to month, 0% growth is obviously not good. So we need to find other ways to go on top. So month 6 and on, assuming you are in the top 3 and you kind of have some ownership of some keywords, you should look at continuing to stack the deck in your favor. So leather handbags, as one example. In addition to ranking number one for that, you should also go look at other keywords like leather handbags for travel, leather handbags for festivals, leather handbags under $100, under $200, under $300, black leather handbags, red leather handbags, maybe do vegan leather versus full grain leather handbags. Like all these different collections you can build out, and you can just start stacking wins on top of one another. So instead of being theoretically capped by a leather handbag search of, let's call it 20,000 searches a month, if you now all of a sudden rank number one for 20 other collections, all theoretically getting like 1 or 2,000 clicks a month, or 1 or 2,000 searches per month, you've now theoretically like 2 to 3x the growth or the potential revenue of your brand just by adding more keywords. And this is another way you can build out a moat, right? I know for a fact, like I've competed in that particular example. I've competed in that space, and I've won number one ranking for leather handbag several times. Now, I know for a fact the brands I competed against were definitely not ever paying attention to the other keywords, like the smaller keywords I mentioned, like black leather handbags, handbags under $200. Like they were ignoring those because they deemed them to be too small. Now, this kind of works. This can work for both big and small brands. When you get to the number one spot for your core keyword, look at building out a moat of those other supporting keywords, so that if you somehow slip, in the number one spot to the number 2 spot or number 3 spot for the big keyword, you still got all the other supporting keywords that will keep you not afloat, but keep you growing in the midst of like that kind of ranking shakeup. Okay. So it's a good moat to build for big brands. For smaller brands too, on the shorter, like flipping the entire horizon, like the whole timeline around, it's much easier to rank for those smaller keywords than it is for the one big keyword. So like if you were starting from complete scratch, I would actually go the opposite route. And I would start with the small keywords, stack a bunch of wins on the way to your big keyword. Okay. So that last part was a little bit different than, obviously there's like a little bit of a backwards timeline there, but it gives you kind of a good idea of how you can approach moat building around month 6 plus. Again, if you're at month 6 with an agency, a freelancer, and you're not making any money, you're not happy, you have no idea what they're doing, like you've probably already asked them what they're doing, and they just will tell you it takes a long time. Again, it's not going to magically turn on months 7, 8, and 9. Like it's not. Like if you don't see any kind of incremental growth in any KPI, it's not just going to fucking happen all of a sudden. Okay, so you need a better strategy. You need to change. And if you want to talk about that change, let me know.